There we go. I've got to let you all know you've been recorded.
Just in case we sue you.
Yeah. Do you think you will sue me?
I don't know. Are you worth suing?
I don't know. I might be. At least I've got a job.
I'll promise not to sue you.
Okay. So I guess we can just make a start, shall
Sure.
we? Okay. I'll introduce Adam, do a little bit of chit chat, and then we'll introduce you, Steph. Oh, what name shall we call you? Just
Oh,
Steph.
Steph's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Steph's fine. Okay. Okay. Hello and welcome to Asking for a Friend. My name's Louise and this is my co-host Adam. Hi, Adam.
Hello, Louise. How are you?
Oh, I've had better weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had to apply for my own job at work and I didn't get it. So there's much hurt ego going on at this end. I do have a job and I do have a good pay still, just not my job.
Oh dear, that doesn't sound good at all.
Oh, it hurt. I tell you, it hurt. But I'm all right now. It's all good. I get to give somebody else half of my job, and I get the same pay. So, could be worse, couldn't it?
Right, so it's not all bad then. It's at
No.
least you've been there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it
I
doesn't
can still
sound.
afford. I can still afford to visit Shetland. That's the main thing.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
How are you, Adam? How's your week been?
I'm good. Yeah, I've had a really, really busy week. I've just kind of crashed out this weekend. Just busy through the week. We've done all sorts of things. I've had a couple of pool nights because the pool league is coming to a close. So we've had some league matches. We did a big fundraiser for Macmillan cancer nurses on Wednesday. So that was good. So yeah, the weekend's just been time to relax, really. So yeah, had a busy.
Very valiant and noble of you to do that.
Well, it's a chap I know up here, and he's been doing all kinds of things to raise money for Macmillan nurses because his dad passed away from cancer, and he's done a fantastic job. He's doing the Edinburgh Marathon. He's arranged quizzes and raffles and all kinds of things, and he's raised an incredible amount of money. So it was just so good to be able to help him out.
Oh, that's amazing. And have you done anything puffin related this week? Maybe kettled a few puffins into a safe space on the beach, rescued a few puffin babies?
Afraid not. No. The puffins are not around at the moment, so yeah, we might have to wait a few months for that. They tend to appear. I think it's May, and then they start flying off middle of August towards the end of August. So when you get here, you might still see a few puffins. I'm not making any promises.
I've become a bit puffin obsessed. Also, I'm losing respect for puffins. I didn't realize they were around so little.
Yeah, they tend to fly off somewhere else for the end of the summer. I don't really know where they go, but yeah, they head off somewhere.
Okay.
You'll
Adam,
probably
you have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you don't see puffins, you'll see maybe some whales and dolphins and otters and stuff. So it won't be a complete loss.
Oh, that's amazing because I went to Iceland once and I booked a whale watching tour, and you were basically guaranteed to see whales. And if you didn't see whales, you could go on another tour. You could keep on going on a whale watching tour until you saw a whale. Anyway, we went out and we didn't see any whales, only I didn't know that. And I booked it for the last day in Iceland. So I'd like to continue
Oh.
that tradition. Go to Iceland and not see whales. Go to Shetland and not see puffins.
Right. We'll try and summon all the wildlife for that weekend that you. Yeah.
Can you can you get a few mates to dress up in wildlife costumes for me at a distance just to humour me?
You might find they're doing that already because there's a festival on that weekend. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
True. Oh,
We'll do
dear.
our best.
So, Adam, you
Mm.
have a question for this week's podcast, don't you?
Yeah, so it's a question I've been asked occasionally over the years that I've been out of the Jehovah's Witness organization, and the question is, can you be gay and a Jehovah's
Mm.
Witness?
If only we knew someone that we could ask, like a friend, maybe,
That would be amazing.
wouldn't it? Hello,
Yeah.
Stephanie. How are you?
Hi, I can answer your question. Your answer's no. You can't.
Oh, thank you for listening to another Asking for a Friend.
Hello.
Yeah, I happen to agree with Steph. That is the correct answer.
Okay. Well, you killed that one dead, didn't you? I think we
Yeah,
need to
sorry.
dig a little bit deeper.
you.
So,
I'm one of your
Steph, do you
two
want to tell
listeners.
us how you know us all first?
Yeah, so well, I've known Adam all my life.
Yep.
And for better or for worse, his family was responsible for bringing my family into the organization. So
Oh, dear.
so when my parents first got contacted by the witnesses, the elder in our local congregation decided that it would be better if they put them with another sort of young family. So I think Adam's mum and dad had been witnesses for a few years, so they studied with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And then Louise, I've known you since 2015, and I'll explain why. Yeah, I started watching your videos in 2015.
Really? Is that how we got to know each other?
Yeah, vaguely. I think about 2018 2017, 18 we started to chat more. But I've been watching your YouTube videos as part of my waking up process since then.
Funny.
Yeah, it's been about 10 years.
I have a gay friend in Portugal who said he started watching my videos, and just as he was leaving the truth or waking up the truth, sorry, just as he was waking up, and then he said he was absolutely disgusted, and he said he watched my videos and he said to himself, "She's a bad bitch," and then, but he said he
They were
couldn't stop
hilarious.
watching.
I
Yeah.
absolutely loved them. I thought they were so funny, and I remember thinking I need to be friends with this woman, so I made it my life's goal.
And here we are,
Here we are
friends.
now. Yeah.
And then obviously you introduced me to Adam because we met
at his dad's funeral, sadly, but every time.
Yeah. Probably worth mentioning there was quite a gap, because what year did you leave the organisation, Steph?
So I left in 2006, and when I left, you were still such a die-hard witness. And I remember getting a text from you in 2017, or a friend request in 2017, and I said, "Oh grief, Adam Chan!" I nearly gave you name away. You might want to redo that, but Adam has requested me on Facebook, and I sent you a text back saying, "Pretty sure you won't want to be friends with me because I'm not a witness anymore." And you said, "Well, neither am I." And it was the biggest shock of my life to that point.
You nearly died of shock. I remember
nearly died of shock, because if anybody was going to be a witness until the bitter end, I was convinced it was you. So we've reconnected, I think, within the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, it was 2017, wasn't it? Yeah.
And have you met up much? Because obviously you've lived in really different parts of the world, haven't you? So apart from the funeral, did you meet up?
Well, I was living in Greece at the time, in Thessaloniki in northern Greece, and Adam was living in Shetland, and he came to Greece. He came to see me for a weekend, which was lovely. And then, sadly, the next time after that we met each other was at his dad's funeral. But we've stayed in contact since then.
I think we might have met 1 or 2 times in between.
Yeah, we may have done.
Maybe, but we don't see each other often enough, Steph.
No, we don't. And I'm back in the UK now, but just haven't made it up to Shetland yet. So I'd love to.
Well, the FYI, there's something going on in August. So
is there? Oh, and I'm off school, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard to get up there, though. It's not easy to get to Shetland, is it?
That's why he's up there.
Yeah, we try and keep the riffraff out.
Yeah, you have definitely done that. Yeah. So, Steph, the reason we've invited you on our podcast, and this might come as a bit of a shock to you, I hope we've not sidelined you with this, but the question is, are you allowed to be gay in the Jehovah's Witnesses? And we figured that you might be gay, so we're hoping you might be able to.
Really, really gay.
Are you?
I'm very gay, yeah.
You don't strike me as very
do
gay.
Do I not sound very gay? I am, though.
No. No, and you don't look very gay either. Not that I'm stereotyping. I'm not saying there's a gay look, but so what was your, I mean, when did you know that you were gay? Were you still a witness when you kind of came to an awareness?
Absolutely. I've known since I was 4. I've always known that I was gay. I've never known any different. And so it puts paid to the argument immediately that it's a choice, because it just really isn't. I've always known. But I just presumed at the same time that I would still marry a nice brother at some time. I thought I would grow out of it. I thought, because I knew that I just wasn't allowed to be gay. So I was always, as I said, aware of it, but I just thought it was something that it was going to be sort of the big unspoken thing, and I was never going to be allowed to accept it or to confront it in any way.
I think when you're young, you can hold conflicting ideas because you're just young and you don't know what the rules are. So when I was like little, like 6, 7, I was convinced I was going to marry my cousin, who is a man.
I probably thought I was going to marry Adam, because we were in the same congregation.
Obviously, incest is fun for all the family, but I just thought that's what I could do. While simultaneously knowing that I couldn't. So I suppose, thinking you're going to marry, you think you're going to follow the traditional route, but also you know something about yourself. When did it get difficult for you?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but my parents left the organisation when I was 19. And you know how it is. You're told all your life, aren't you? This is the truth. This is the truth. You have to stick with it. I remember my mum telling me when I was so little, this is the truth. And if ever we say it's not the truth anymore, we've been taken by Satan, and you have to stick with it, whatever happens. And of course, when I was 18, my parents turned around and said, it's not the truth. You're in a cult and you need to leave. So I was absolutely stunned, and I ended up moving out. I chose the religion over my family. I lost my parents overnight and my 2 brothers overnight. My sister was a witness. She just got married. And so I left home at 19 and had my own flat at 19. And I was, the great example of somebody who'd left an apostate family. But I'd always struggled with this thing about being gay. And at the time, it was a case of survival. You get out of your house and you have to get a job and you have to be an adult for the first time in your life. And I went through a really, really bad period of depression. And it was while I was living alone that I realised that I was gay. I'd already known, I'd always known, but it was getting more to the point that I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
So I had a very good friend in the congregation who Adam knows very well, and we were extremely close. She was married, a pioneer sister married to an elder, and I came out to her and I just said, this is how I feel, how I've always felt. I had done absolutely nothing with anybody, but I was terrified of being found out, and she went straight to the elders, told the elders. And the next thing I knew, I had 2 elders coming round to my house, my flat. And I had to confront it when I was about 20, 21.
That's horrific.
Yeah, it really was.
Been really traumatizing.
Yeah, and it was so inappropriate. Looking back now, there is absolutely no chance that I would have had 2 men come to my house. They were asking me, what had I done with a girl? They'd ask me, did I masturbate? What did I think about when I masturbated? What had I done with other people? What my sexual experiences were. Also, an elder who was a friend of mine, his wife had passed away. And he used to sort of check in with me from time to time. And I'd always seen him as a substitute dad. He offered to fix my computer because the fan had broken. So while he fixed my computer, he went into my internet history and looked at everything that I'd looked at and then confronted me with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. Because I had just been exploring like lesbian dating sites and
Yeah.
questions like, am I gay? This was 20 years ago. So he'd done a deep dive into my hard drive, into my cookies and everything. And at this point, I had done nothing. I was
Same.
just terrified of being found out. And it just felt like such a massive betrayal at that point. And I
Yeah,
didn't
by everybody. By the girl
absolutely,
that reported you, by the elder
yeah,
that's snooped private
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Did she ever give a reason as to why she reported you?
She thought she was doing the right thing. The thing is that she and I were very, very close, strangely close. Nothing
Mm.
ever happened between the two of us, but I think looking back, I think we did have a sort of romantic connection. But we would never have acted on it. I was too terrified. She was married, but we would hold hands in the car and we would, cuddle each other. I would get in her bed while her husband was out on a shepherding call and cuddle with her. It was all very kind of sweet and chaste, but also crossed a line, I think. Absolutely crossed a line. And I think that she was trying to maybe absolve herself from anything. And also at the same time, she thought she was doing the right thing. She thought she was protecting my spirituality, I suppose. I don't know.
I remember being like a late teenager, and when things started going on between teenagers,
Yeah.
some teenagers being super pious with the others. If they knew that something had happened, and they'd go up to them and say, "Well, you've got 2 weeks to report yourself to the elders, or I will report you." It's
She
all
went that
very
day. She went that
wow.
day to an elder's house, and the elder said, "We'll come round and see her. Please be assured that we love her." And it was all done under this guise of shepherding. But no, she didn't give me the ultimatum. It was she went straight there.
Wow.
Yeah, when I told her.
Wow. It's hard for me because I was around at the time,
Mm,
but I had no. I was very dense when it came to people might be gay,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's drummed into you that you're not allowed to be gay. That's wrong. You're only allowed to have a man and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even comprehend that you might be going through this incredibly difficult period where you couldn't really speak to anyone
No.
because you'd get judged or someone would go and
Yeah.
get you into trouble.
And I didn't want to disappoint anybody either because after my parents had left the organisation, I was the only one left in my family. My sister was already, as I said, married, so I was the only one out of a family of 6 who was seen as this exemplary family. There were 2 of us left, me and my sister, and I didn't want to disappoint the congregation by giving them that further bombshell because even though I ended up fading, I've never been disfellowshipped. I ended up fading. It was another 10 years after I faded that I woke up from the indoctrination. So I faded and then stopped going to meetings in about 2006, 2007, but I still believed it until 2015.
So is it right to say you faded because you realised you were
Yes,
gay,
yes. But
but
I was
still believed
100%
it?
me. I was physically out, but mentally in for 10 years. So I lost everything. I lost everybody like you do. You lose all your friends. I had to start all over again, like navigating the world, but also feeling I was with worldly people. And it wasn't until 2015 that I thought, right, I actually went to a Kingdom Hall. I went to a meeting, a Sunday meeting, and I said, I was in a relationship at the time, a long-term relationship. But I said to myself, if I go back to this meeting and if I feel that it's the truth, then I will go back full time. And I'll finish my relationship and I'll just fight this gay thing. And then it sort of set in motion with the Australian Royal Commission and with YouTube. I realised finally that that I was in a cult.
Did you realise when you were in that meeting, or did you stay for the whole meeting?
I stayed for the meeting and I realised, this is the same stuff I was learning 10 years ago. I'd learnt nothing. It was as boring, as dry, as rehearsed, and as formulaic as it ever was. So that did coincide with the Australian Royal Commission, and I binged that in 2015. I remember listening to it all day at work. And then I went on YouTube and I discovered the videos of He Who Must Not Be Named. And, it helped wake me up, like it helped a lot of people wake up. And then I discovered the podcast you used to do, Louise. And yeah, that was it. But I was so grateful because I'd spent 10 years still terrified of thunderstorms. Every thunderstorm, I thought it was Armageddon. Even though I'd been out for so many years, I was still convinced I was going to die at any minute.
Yeah, you do think you're going to die. You think, well, there's this little bit of time before Armageddon comes, but once it comes, then I'm going to be destroyed because I'm doing all these fun sins.
These fun sins. Yeah, absolutely. I remember coming out to a girl at work. I'd got a job. I'd been out of the organisation for a couple of years, and I got a job, and there was an old sister that I knew. Adam, you will know by the name of Josie, and she was a cleaner at the store that I used to work at. And I told her that she said, "Oh, I've not seen you for a long time," and I told her no, that I was gay, and I got a phone call from an elder the next day. I'd been out of the organisation for, as I said, a couple of years, still had the same number. And I got invited to a shepherding call because
he wanted to know how much she'd been. He wanted to know how much she'd been masturbating again. They are dirty, aren't they?
I'd moved on from masturbators by then, but yeah, I didn't want to give them the pleasure, but I didn't go to that shepherding call. So yeah, but it stayed with me for so long.
When you're in the organisation and two elders say, "We're coming round to see you," you don't feel like you have any right to refuse that. No. Even if it's in your own house, you feel they're the people in authority. They're allowed to come in and read me the Riot Act.
It was one of my best friends who I told them that the elders wanted to see me, and she said, "Do you know you don't have to go?" I was like, and then I realised, I don't. I didn't have to go. I didn't have to answer to them anymore. But it took so long to wake up from that. And I think that was about 2008. And it was another 7 years until I actually woke up from the indoctrination of it. I'd had a conversation with my sister, who is still a witness to this day. And she told me about 10 years ago that she would rather I was single and miserable than happy with a woman. And at that, I just, and I actually saw her. We both saw her, didn't we, Adam, at your dad's funeral?
I spoke to her, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I spoke to her briefly at the funeral,
And it's so strange because I've never been disfellowshipped or disassociated myself. And yet you have, Adam, and she spoke to you but didn't speak to me.
Yeah. How's that?
And what I found fascinating about that situation, as much as I've been a witness for 30 years and I know everything they do, I was sat in a Kingdom Hall with you, Stephanie, saying, "Are you being shunned now? Is she shunning you? Is he shunning you?" Because it's the absence of something and you can't see it.
Yes.
So it might just be that somebody doesn't know you, or they're just, I've not got around to talking to you, or they're actively shunning. You had to tell me that lady over there is my sister and she is shunning me.
Yeah.
But you never see it.
My niece, who I've never met before, walked in front of us. Do you remember? We were sat there and I said, "That's my niece," and she's 7, 8 years old. And she looked at me dead in the eye. I had no idea that I was her auntie.
Yeah, that's really cruel.
Yeah, it is bad. Did you something that I want to ask you, Steph? When you were growing up, did you get any kind of inkling that there were gay people or people who were sort of fighting against it in the congregation?
Definitely not in the congregation that I was in with you, but for a while my family moved to Anglesey. And there's a congregation just off the coast of Anglesey that we were part of for a while. And there is a brother there who is incredibly camp, incredibly effeminate and camp. And he was single for years. I think he probably still is. And I remember years after coming out, seeing a mutual friend who'd also left the organisation by then, who said that he told the elders he was gay, but that he'd accepted that he would never be able to do anything about it and had chosen to stay single. And I just felt so incredibly sad for him. Yeah. I knew that there is actually an ex-witness sister. You'll remember, Adam, who is she came out. She was forced to get married at a young age. I think she was 16. She was just so badly treated by the organisation and just really left behind. She was in a very, very abusive marriage. They knew she was in an abusive marriage. Long story short, she was gay. She's broken free of it now. She's been married to a woman for 20 years, and she runs a women's refuge. She's the director of a series of refuges where she helps other abused women. But yeah, she was gay as well. But growing up, I think I was the only one when you were there, Adam, when you and I were in the congregation together. I think, yeah, but you never know, do you?
No.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I look back now and I think, yes, there were people that were definitely gay, but it was either beaten out of them or they were so scared that they just conformed and you know, they probably still are gay, but they're living this lie of we have to live by the rules of the religion.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of it, it's I was thinking about this before. I think there will come a point with the organisation where the older people will die off, and I think that younger people just won't stick with the religion anyway. But as I'm a teacher now in a high school, and being gay is just such a non-thing. 20 years ago, it wasn't just that I had the congregation who would look down on me if I came out, but we weren't able to be out at school either. And I think that young witness kids who are gay will be surrounded by an environment, a society, particularly in this country, although I know in America, it's going the other way at the moment, and I do worry about that. But I think that it's such a non-thing to be gay now amongst kids.
Yeah, it is.
They're out, they're dating, they're out as gay, or they may present as queer, and they will date people of the same sex, and nobody bats an eyelid. When I was growing up,
flip-flop between, won't
absolutely,
they?
and they have the freedom to do that.
They're indifferent to who. The big shock thing now is trans people. That's the big thing that everyone gets the knickers in a twist about. And gay is almost like old school. Now your nana's cool with gay now because there's trans people to get angry at.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. And I think if I had been 15, 16, now, even with the religion, I would like to think that somebody would have, taken me under their wing at school, or I would have been able to have been out at school, and maybe that would have changed the whole trajectory. I really don't know.
Are there any governments anywhere that have picked up on this kind of homophobic view that Jehovah's Witnesses have?
I don't think so, because of all the court cases that have ever come through from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I think we're looking at, child abuse cases. Yeah. I think it's just anecdotal, and generally people society waking up to homophobic, fundamentalist Christian religions. And I think a lot of the time it's done by an individual. I don't think there's anything government level that's been done to tackle it. I really don't know. But it's interesting because it would be part of safeguarding now, wouldn't it? It would be part if a child came to me at school and said, "Miss, I'm gay, but my family are Jehovah's Witnesses." It would be, it may be flagged as emotional abuse.
Yes,
or a fundamental
emotional abuse.
Because sexuality is a protected characteristic by the government. So, so for things like that, I think we would just be more aware of it now. And I think it would be tackled. I think kids would have much more support from school. But
And I think the culture of safeguarding in schools now is so big and so important that it's something that teachers look out for, to protect children,
Absolutely.
for any kind of neglect or abuse. Whereas back in the day, I just think, teachers just thought, because that was the culture and they'd not had all this safeguarding training. Well, I just teach maths, so what can I do? It's not my job to interfere. It was seen as interference, whereas now safeguarding is seen as it is your duty to step in if you see neglect or abuse or emotional abuse. So you're right. School is a place where you can go now to talk about things and feel safe. Whereas before, I don't. I was pretty miserable at school, but I wouldn't have said to anybody, like a teacher, "Oh, this is happening," or "That's happening at home." I saw them as two really separate things.
Yeah, and my dad was extremely violent when we were growing up, and the Jehovah's Witness religion really gave him a free pass, if you like, to be as abusive as he wanted, because of that thing of the man being the head of the family and disciplining his kids however he wanted. But I know, looking back, I told my teachers things about my dad's violence, but 25, 30 years ago, when I was young, they didn't do anything. Right now it would be flagged, I'm sure of it.
It would. It'd be recorded. It'd be referred to the designated safeguarding lead. If it kept happening, it'd be referred up to the local authority, designated safeguarding person. Yeah, it really would.
Yeah, and so much has changed. I think it wasn't just about being gay for me. It was a huge part of it, but it was also because the whole thing about being a Jehovah's Witness, as you know, is the complete stifling of any personality and any individuality and anything about being yourself. And that, I think, is the fundamental issue with the organisation for me. Anything that protected a child, they failed at so miserably. With me, the elders knew that my dad was violent. They did nothing. The elders knew that I was gay. It wasn't allowed. Anything that went against the sort of the party line, really. It was quite multifaceted from my experience, I think.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things I want to go back and pick up on. One thing, when we're talking about were there other people in the congregation, my friend was in Portugal. He moved from a little congregation in Sintra to Lisbon, which is the capital.
Yeah.
And he's a very good looking man. But even as a teenager, he said brothers, ministerial servants, and elders were hitting on him all the time.
Wow.
Like, he's listed a handful of people in the congregation that tried to sexually hit him up while he was still a witness. Yeah, which is really, I mean, they must have obviously sensed it on him, but not punitively. Like, here's an opportunity.
Well, what I struggled with was that I, for some reason, always attracted the older brothers in the congregation. So we had a sister who died of cancer. And when I was 18, her husband, who was an elder, wanted to date me. I was 18. He was 46, 47. And then another sister died, and her husband tried to date me as well, and he was the same age, 46, 47. And it just felt as though I was destined to marry an old brother.
Oh, that'd turn anybody gay, to be fair.
Yeah, there's absolutely this culture. Just with you saying that, sorry, there's absolutely a horrific culture of young people being preyed on, whether they are straight or gay. I absolutely believe that not enough was done to protect young people, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was the thing about the elder going through your private laptop history. One of the things that me and you, Steph, have learned about narcissism and emotionally mature people and people with attachment issues is there's no boundaries.
No.
So there's no private space for the individual.
No.
And I find that the same in their religion, because nothing nothing is allowed to be private, because of course even your thoughts can be sins. So that,
Yes.
you were told that even if you just thought a bad thing, like if you were laid in bed not even masturbating but just thinking about it, you were sinning, and God could see that. So there was no privacy, and that opened you up throughout your entire childhood to scrutiny from anybody that wanted to scrutinize you. And
you felt you had to go along with it as well.
Yeah.
So when those two elders have come to my house, because I've confessed that I have these feelings, the elders have come round to my house. Anybody who would hear it today would be disgusted and would be like, absolutely not. They have no right whatsoever to do that. But you just felt that you had to go along with it.
Because there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
And the whole religion kind of mimics a narcissistic relationship. Absolutely. Where nothing of yours is private, everything is open to scrutiny by anybody who decides that they want to scrutinize it, and you're open to being shamed, which is a big kind of immature relationship thing.
And shame had a lot to do with it. I mean, you and I have talked at length about this, haven't we, Louise? But the shame that I carried, the internalized homophobia, still affects me today. If we're talking about the impact that this has, it doesn't just end when you leave the organisation, and it doesn't end when you come out, and it doesn't end when you get in a relationship. It affects so many different parts of your life. Not feeling good enough and not feeling as though you have a right, really, to be happy.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you feel that there's been a long-term damage done because of it?
Yeah, and I am really lucky in that I'm so much better off than I was, because I've done a lot of work, but I've ended up in relationships with narcissists, with people who have emotional immaturity and attachment issues and all sorts. And I know one thing I've really struggled with, I qualified as a teacher last year, last summer. I've only been teaching for a few months in September, but I'm 41. And I know a lot of witnesses relate to this idea of playing catch up and feeling that you're never going to catch up to that. You should be further along in your life now. I feel that I should have been teaching 20 years ago, but I missed out on an education. I missed out on independent thinking. It isn't just gay, it's the whole impact of growing up as a Jehovah's Witness that has untold effects.
Yeah, it does. It's like living life with your shoelaces tied, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I look back and I view it as the year that I left is the year I got out of prison.
Yeah.
It's almost like you've been constrained in this cell, and you've not been able to do the things you want to do or have the freedoms that you want to have. And when you come out, well, certainly for me, I didn't know what to do first. I just went a bit crazy, because you suddenly have this freedom to make your own choices. I guess it settles down after a bit, but yeah, that's the way I liken it to being in a jail cell.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because do you remember those talks that we would have about how you should discipline your children, and you should, they're like a coiled spring if you don't let them have certain freedoms. And it's just the same as when you're a witness, because you end up doing crazy things and experimenting with life when you're in your 20s and 30s in a way that kids went through when they were 15, 16. You go through sort of a second puberty, a second adolescence, I think, as a witness when you've left.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's interesting what Adam said about coming out, because if you're gay, there's two coming outs, isn't there?
Yes.
We all come out of the religion, which is hard enough, and then there's your other coming out as well, and we're all coming out of something. And I think with sex, I mean, if I broaden the conversation out to just sexuality in general, there's so much shame heaped on anything about sexuality, like your own body. You're not allowed to, probably people don't even examine their own bodies medically like they should, because of the shame of touching and looking and examining and experimenting. And it's such a natural, it would be like putting a huge amount of shame around eating or breathing. things that you can't not do.
Yeah.
And you can't not have sex. It's a natural function of the body.
And do you know what's really weird with you saying that as well? And it's just reminded me of something. When I was young, I remember a discussion about rape in my house, because my dad was very sort of open about things. He would talk about things very openly. And I remember him saying, if ever anybody tries to rape you, you fight them and fight them and fight them. He said, even if it means that you die, you need to fight them. As though this thing about female sexuality and preserving your purity was more important than what you may have to do to physically survive, to not be murdered. You know, this idea we would rather you were dead than defiled.
Shouting out was a witness doctrine, wasn't it? Actually,
yes. Yeah, and that if you didn't shout out, you were guilty.
Yes.
If you didn't fight back, if you didn't die instead, then you were culpable.
Yeah,
and
you were. Yeah.
Because of this sort of such an archaic notion of feminine, of a woman's own sexuality, of being, you know, prized above her life.
And it completely ignores the nervous system's primary method of functioning, which is fight, flight, and freeze.
Yes.
And in the order of what your body does, you flee first. And if you can't flee and you can't fight because you're powerless, you freeze.
Yes.
So shouting out is probably the last thing somebody who's powerless would do in a really threatening situation. Yet we were told that's what you've got to do to be not guilty of your own rape.
Yes.
But all the research says nervous systems don't work like that.
No. And when I was a child, because I was in a situation where I was in permanent flight mode and permanent fear because of growing up, when I say that the experience of being a witness was multifaceted, it really is true, because my dad was so violent and the witnesses knew that he was violent and they did nothing. They didn't tell me mum that she should leave. They didn't support her. It's more than just
talk to him and say, stop battering your kids, stop hitting your family.
No. In fact, there was an elder in the congregation who once told me dad that it was up to him how he disciplined his children and that nobody could say anything. It was up to him, and that sort of gave him a free pass to be whatever he wanted. And it's that thing of some people get the privilege to be who they want to be, you know, but the rest of us don't. He wanted to be a controlling narcissist, and that suited, you know, that worked. It was, you know, really worked for him. But
would you have a message now for young Jehovah's Witnesses who might be fighting their own selves over sexuality?
The feelings that they have, whether it's their sexuality or if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut. If your gut is telling you that you're gay, you probably are, and that isn't going to change. You can't pray it away. But also things that the way the organisation tells you to treat people, if it doesn't feel right, the way it tells you to be, you know, to kind of isolate yourself or to not support gay people, if that doesn't feel right, trust your gut. That the rhetoric that it's so outdated. I mean, ultimately, I'd say leave. It's, you know, you're in a cult, leave. But of course, it isn't as easy as that, and I do understand that. The idea that you will find your real family, you know, I believe that there's the friendships that I have outside of the organisation, outside of my own family, are stronger than, you know, than my blood family, if you like. And you will find them.
I had a Bible study with a gay man just after I got married, the first marriage, the Jehovah's Witness marriage, obviously. And I remember feeling really awkward about it because he was kind of tentatively asking is it allowed and what does the Bible say? And I could only find there's one really harsh scripture about, I can't remember, but it's probably somewhat
Men
brutal,
who
like
should not lie with men, and
men who lie with men should have the gizzards skewered out
yeah,
by small girls or something like that. I'm sure I'm remembering it a bit different. Anyway, one week we went and his boyfriend came to the door and he opened the door and he just handed me all the books back and
yeah,
said, "Don't come back." And I
yeah.
was so happy.
Mm.
I was so happy. And even though I was a witness and still very much in it, I remember thinking, I'm so relieved for him
Yeah.
because he would have had to end his relationship. He would have been miserable. We would have been telling him he was a dirty sinner. And oh my God, the relief when I was so glad his boyfriend stood in and made that decision for him.
Mm. I was thinking about this as well. It's interesting because I was married. I'm divorced now, but I was married to a woman for 10 years. And I was thinking what it would be like if I was contacted on the ministry or in some way got to learn about the witnesses, and if it was that perfect storm of maybe personal trauma or feeling vulnerable, or the political climate worrying me about the future or something, and I was really interested in the witnesses and I started a study or I started going to meetings. I wonder what would happen, because my marriage, gay marriage, is legal. It's a it's has as much worth and value and legal protection as a heterosexual marriage. Would I be encouraged to get divorced as a Jehovah's Witness if I was married
Yeah.
to a woman?
Yeah.
Question that. Would they recognise that marriage?
I don't know. Probably not. I wouldn't be allowed to do anything. I'm sure I wouldn't be allowed to remain married. I'm sure. I'm positive.
Yeah, you wouldn't be allowed
If
to
there was
remain
no
married.
adultery, would it be a scriptural? It wouldn't be a scriptural divorce.
Oh, that's a good one.
But I wouldn't be allowed to remain married. I wouldn't be allowed to stay married to my wife.
But you wouldn't be allowed to have a
But I
scriptural
wouldn't be allowed a
divorce if
scriptural
nobody knew.
divorce. Yeah,
I think what had happened is an old elder whose wife had just died, probably 30 years older than you, would offer to adulter with you. So,
possibly. Yeah, so we could get a get out of jail free card, and that maybe I could
yeah.
marry that nice brother.
It's a question from readers that someone should write into the
Yeah,
Watchtower.
and say, because my marriage is valid and legal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they could, because the witnesses could have argued, I imagine, at a certain point, when we had civil partnerships as opposed to marriage, they could say, well, it's not marriage. So you could
Yeah.
dissolve a civil
Bits
partnership and be free
without
to
needing
marry again.
adultery.
Yes, without needing adultery. But now, to get divorced, if I was to get divorced as a lesbian, or no, if I was to be a witness as a lesbian who is married, would they let me? I don't know. I really don't know. I probably just wouldn't be allowed to answer up or go in the ministry. What
Or,
a shame.
do the microphones, even if you were wearing a man suit.
Yeah, you'd be marked for sure. Bad
Yeah.
association.
I wouldn't be allowed to be baptized.
No, it was interesting. Just before we came on the podcast, I was looking at some of the language that the witnesses use on their website when they're discussing homosexuality, and from the 1950s to the present day, it's not really changed much.
No, and I think they've doubled down, haven't they, in recent years. I think that because they have been so much more lax about certain things as time's gone on. I was thinking about this before when I was driving. I was listening to a podcast about how sisters are now allowed to attend the final day of MTS, or what was MTS.
Hey.
Yeah, there's a new thing where I can't remember what they call. What's the program MTS, but that is just for brothers still?
The ministerial. Oh, that's the ministerial training school, isn't it?
It might. I don't know if it's still called that, but the equivalent of that was just for brothers. On the final day, the sisters now were allowed to attend. I think they're definitely opening the doors. I mean, sisters are even allowed to wear trousers now.
Yeah.
I think that they are giving women a bit more presence in the organisation, probably to tick boxes regarding safeguarding. I don't know, but they've still never changed, never wavered on their view of gay people.
Do you think also that the reason might be that they're actually running out of men?
Yes, and especially older men. I think when this generation dies off, when this governing body dies off, and I think when people who are our age now, 30s, 40s, are going to be, looking at life, and I just don't think it'll be as hard hitting as it was, because I don't think their kids are going to stay with it.
They're already saying, well, they announced last year that 21-year-old men can now be elders.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Oh, gosh. It's terrifying. That would have been you for sure.
21 is such a baby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how annoying I would have been as a 21?
Oh, you'd have been absolutely insufferable. You really would. You were the biggest. Honestly, Louise, he was the biggest witness nerd I'd ever known.
Oh.
It wouldn't have been good. I have to say that when Steph and I were children, we did go around the school playground bullying the other kids.
Yeah, telling them they were all going to die at Armageddon. I know.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, we did. I know. But
We felt quite proud of ourselves.
I know, we did. And there was a member, Mr. Blundell, who was Mrs. Blundell, and she was a dinner lady at our school. And her husband, Mr. Blundell, he was Santa Claus every year. He was Father Christmas. And he would visit every year, and me and Adam would run around going, "Pagan, pagan, you're going to die at Armageddon."
Strength in numbers, I suppose.
I know.
Yeah.
So interesting discussion, and I would like to hope that it's easier, as you say, for young people now. But I just think, when you're born into a really repressive regime, it's so hard to see the other side, isn't it? Yeah. I remember just being a witness and being terrified of just thinking, I can't leave, I can't. It's just impossible. And then you do, and you're like, wait, no, it's not just impossible. You can do things.
It feels terrifying, but I really believe that leaving the organisation was the start of me finding my own voice, and it's so empowering to trust. This is why I say trust your gut above everything else. I've learned that in very, very recent years and months. Louise, you'll know about this.
Same,
when something feels off, trust it.
It is off.
I remember sitting in the Kingdom Hall when I was about 15, 16, so I knew that I was gay at that point. And I was in a meeting, I was really, really bored, and I was reading through the Genesis account, and I came to this bit about Lot and his daughters and having sex with his daughters. And we never talked about that bit. It's never one of the things that was ever really discussed in the organisation, I think because it was so horrific. And I remember reading that and thinking, so he's allowed to have sex with his daughters.
His own daughters.
Okay, his own daughters, but I can't be gay. And I remember thinking that. And I wish at that point that I'd said, actually, I don't agree with, I think this religion is wrong. If a religion can say that is okay. I mean, hindsight's great, but I wish I'd had that courage at that age to point to that scripture and say, you cannot tell me that he is a better person than I am.
Yeah.
So for young people, I would just say it's not going to get any better. Armageddon isn't coming. You're in a cult. Leave.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and I know it's easy for me to say that because I'm older and I'm independent and I don't need my parents, etc. But Armageddon's not coming. That's one thing you don't have to worry about or to fear.
And the sooner you leave, the more life you've got.
I wish I'd left years before I did.
When you think about it, it's good advice, isn't it? Because it's a cycle that repeats itself.
Yeah.
There was the Stay Alive till 1975 brigade.
Yeah.
And as much as the organisation tries to deny it, that was a thing.
It was. I remember it.
Absolutely.
People gave up their lives, their jobs, and all of their money and their houses because they were convinced by this organisation that the world was ending in 1975.
Yeah.
And then it happened again in 1994 and 2000, and goodness
They
knows
have lied time and time again. And what's the scripture? Is it Leviticus when they said, if somebody comes prophesying in my name and it doesn't come true, then it's not
true. They're a false prophet.
Yeah.
My friend's mum had a hotel down in the south of England somewhere, and sold it and donated all the money to the Watchtower in 1975. And then 1975 didn't come, and that was their family's sole income. And then they were poverty stricken for years. I asked my dad what happened about that. I said, what happened on January 1st in 1976? Because I was only a child. I do remember it though. But I don't remember this bit. And he said it was never mentioned. And then in October of 1976, they snuck an article in that just said some people have run ahead of Jehovah.
Yeah. But I look at people like Tony Morris, who was the authority on anything Jehovah's, because even if they say all men on the governing body were equal, I don't believe that was the case. I think people like Tony Morris would have had so much control and so much power, and now he's been stricken from the record, never to be mentioned again. He is Voldemort as far as the organization is concerned. So they are just full of absolute nonsense, and they will flip-flop as easily as anything.
On the podcast?
Oh, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love to have Tony Morris on this podcast.
If any of our listeners know where Tony Morris currently is,
does anybody know what happened to him? Why? It's still... I'm surprised that because there are so many Pemo people in Bethel, I'm surprised that we haven't had a scoop on what really happened.
I just assumed it was because he was an alcoholic.
But that he's still a believer. I wondered whether he'd gone rogue and that he'd...
Yeah, there was a few different rumours and conspiracy theories. So the ones that have kind of stuck in my head are that on his videos and his broadcasts and all of the statements he's made over the years to the world, basically, he's come out as very hardline against certain things.
Yeah, they're just asking to be sued because he was he just a liability, right?
Exactly. So because of a lot of the court cases that they get thrown at them, and let's not pretend here they are getting court cases thrown at them left, right, and centre every day of the week, and twice on a Sunday. So I think the theory goes that because he was so hardline, they wanted to move towards being a bit more ambiguous with some of the core teachings. So
they couldn't get nailed in court. Yeah.
So they asked him to tone things down, and he refused, and then he was forcibly removed, given a payoff, given a house, given a car, and told.
But that he's still a believer, do you think?
That's the how the story goes. That he's still a believer. Right. He knows where all the bodies are buried, so they've paid him off, and he's kept under observation. Now, how much of that is true, I don't know. But if somebody knows, please tell us.
Thank you, Steph, for being our guest today. You've been really open and like laid out your life for us, and I appreciate you letting us pick it over to answer our question. Thank you.
I just think it's so important. I appreciate what what you're doing. As I woke up, years ago, but there are people who still need to hear it now. So I think what you're doing is great. So I'm one of your 2 listeners as well. So I don't know what the other one is at this point.
Damn. At some point. That means there's only one person listening this week then. The other one's a guest.
No, keep doing it. It's brilliant.
Well, thank you to our other listener for listening. And thank you to, if anyone else happens to stumble across us, thank you very much for listening to Asking for a Friend. Stop recording.